The air in Olympia was not empty. It carried the scent of crushed time under sandaled feet, the memory of smoke from 1,000 sacrificial fires, and the silence a god left behind when the earth still believed in miracles. Before we begin, take a moment to breathe deeply now. Let your shoulders sink into softness. If you're able, gently like this story. Subscribe to the channel for more journeys and whisper to us in the comments where your heart rests tonight. We listen always. Now, let go of every weight. Feel your eyelids growing tender like olive leaves at twilight. Notice your breath flowing in, cool and slow, like a mountain stream, flowing out, warm and heavy, like summer honey. With each exhale, release a worry, a thought, a name. Let it dissolve into the hush. Your body is safe here. Your mind may wander. Your heart may soften. Listen now, only if you wish to. The night is patient. 5 centuries before hope was born in Bethlehem, a valley slept, cradled by rivers. Alpheus and Cladios twined like silver serpents through the green. Here, in the sacred grove of Altus, stone wept, not with sorrow, but with awe. For 40 years, the hands of Phidias had moved like prayers over ivory, like blessings over gold. His workshop stood west of the temple. Dust motes danced there in slanting light. A fragrance lingered, cedar resin, beeswax, and the sharpness of chisels kissing marble. No ordinary statue grew here, no mortal likeness. This was Zeus. The god sat on a throne of ebony and jewels. Cedar wood, shaped like lions, guarded his knees. Ivory skin gleamed like moonlight on snow. Gold robes pulled around him, liquid, heavy as a river of sun. In his right hand, Nike, goddess of victory, alighted forever on an outstretched palm, her wings still trembling, as if She'd just arrived, but the eyes, Phidias saved them for last. Sapphires from Persia, cut deep as midnight oceans, when set into the ivory face, they seemed to hold the sky's own fire. A priest who witnessed the unveiling wrote to stand before him is to forget how to breathe. The God is not carved, he is captured. Tonight we follow a young woman, Lysandra, her feet bare, calloused from the path from Corinth. She carried a clay jar of olive oil, her village's offering, not for the games that roared every 4 years, but for the silence, for the God who listened in the between times. Her brother was ill, fever dreams shaking him like a reed. The physician whispered, Apollo has turned his face. So Lysandra walked, hoping against hope that Zeus might intercede. The path to the temple was flanked by statues, heroes, athletes, kings, all frozen in marble triumph. Yet as Lysandra drew closer, a strange thing happened. The stone faces seemed to turn just slightly, their eyes following her, not threatening. Witnessing, a breeze stirred, warm, carrying salt from distant seas. Cicadas hummed in the pines. A low chant drifted from the temple precinct. Priests tending the eternal flame. She reached the colossal doors, bronze, green with age. As they swung inward, a sigh escaped the hinges, like the mountain exhaling. Inside, dimness reigned, shadows pooled like spilled ink. High above, slits in the roof let in dagger thin sunbeams. They cut through incense smoke, illuminating floating worlds of dust. And then she saw, at the far end, on a dais, bathed in one solitary, slanting ray, sat the god. Lysandra stumbled. The jar almost slipped. Her breath vanished. No scroll, no traveler's tale, prepared her. This wasn't a statue. It was a presence. The ivory glowed from within. The gold pulsed like a heartbeat. Those sapphire eyes seemed to gather all the light, to hold it, to understand it. They looked not at her, but into her, seeing the fear for her brother, the blisters on her feet, the loneliness of the long road. She approached, step by trembling step. The cool air carried whispers, perhaps the rustle of priestly robes, perhaps the settling of ancient wood, perhaps something else. She knelt on the smooth stone, cold seeped into her bones. Lifting the jar, she poured the rich oil into a basin at the throne's base. It gleamed dark gold. The scent, earthy, sweet, filled the space. Mighty Zeus, her voice, a moth's wing in the vastness. Hear me. Before she could continue, a sound froze her, not from the priests, not from the door, from above. A soft, distinct click, like ivory settling, or a finger uncurling from a throne. Lysandra looked up slowly, dread and hope twining in her chest. The ray of light had shifted. It no longer bathed the god's face. It fell now on his right hand, on the tiny golden goddess. Nike, her outstretched wings seemed to shimmer, not with reflected light, but with movement, as if she strained against the god's palm, yearning to take flight forever, almost alive. Lysandra's prayer died on her lips. The oil glistened, a silent plea at the foot of impossible majesty. Above her, the air thrummed, not with sound, with waiting, and deep within the statue's sapphire eyes, a light flickered, not reflected, born. Was it the sunset through the roof, or something looking out? The chamber held its breath. The shadows deepened. Lysandra remained kneeling, caught between awe and terror. The scent of olive oil hung heavy like an unanswered question. Far away, a nightingale began to sing. Its melody, fragile, perfect, pierced the temple walls, as if calling to the dawn still hours away. The statue did not move, but the light in its eyes deepened, swirling like a storm over a calm sea. Nike's wings trembled in the fading beam. A gold feather, no larger than an eyelash, detached itself. It drifted down, down through the smoky air, turning slowly, catching the last glimmer of sun. Lysandra watched, transfixed, as it floated toward her like a promise or a warning. It landed without a sound upon the dark pool of her offering. Ripples spread, silver in the oil, reflecting for a heartbeat, not her own face, but the face of her brother, pale, peaceful, sleeping. Then the image was gone. The chamber grew colder. The sapphire eyes dimmed to mere stone once more. Or had they? Outside, the nightingale fell silent. Lysandra reached out, a shaking finger toward the feather, resting on the sacred oil. Did it hold a god's touch? A blessing? A farewell? Before she could touch it, a gust of wind swirled through the high vents, cold, sudden, carrying the scent of distant rain. The single feather lifted, twirled, and vanished into the gathering dark of the temple's deepest shadows, leaving only the oil, the silence, and the towering god, whose gaze now seemed to hold the weight of stars yet unseen. Lysandra, alone in the immense quiet, knew her prayer had been heard, but the answer was a whisper lost in the folds of night. And high above, on the god's palm, Nike's wings stretched ever so slightly toward the void, as if ready to fly into a dream or into a storm. The darkness deepened, holding its breath, waiting for the dawn or something older. Lysandra did not move. The cold stone beneath her knees seemed to pulse. A slow, deep rhythm, like a sleeping giant's heartbeat far above in the rafters. An owl called once, a mournful sound that echoed in the hollow, sacred space. Or was it an echo? Did the sound come from within the statue's ivory chest? The last sliver of sunlight fled the temple, leaving only the faint glow of the eternal flame reflected in Zeus's sapphire eyes. They seemed to burn now with their own cold fire, watching Lysandra, watching the empty space where the feather had floated, watching something beyond the temple walls, something approaching in the velvet night. Outside, the wind rose higher, whispering through the olive groves, bringing not rain, but the salt-kissed chill of the distant sea, and beneath it, a sound, faint at first, like pebbles tumbling down a dry slope, then clearer, rhythmic hoofbeats, many galloping hard toward Olympia through the stillness of the sacred truce. Lysandra froze, her blood turning to ice. No one rode like that to the altar unless bearing terrible news or seeking terrible refuge. The great bronze doors began to groan, not from wind, from pressure. Outside, Zeus, majestic, eternal, seemed to lean forward in the gloom, his shadow stretching long and dark across the floor toward Lysandra, enveloping the basin of her offering, swallowing the last reflected light. The hoofbeats stopped. Silence. Then a voice, roughened by haste and fear, shattered the temple's peace. A voice calling her brother's name. The doors shuddered under a heavy blow, and the oil in the shadowed basin where the golden feather had lain began very slowly to ripple, not from wind, not from sound, but as if something beneath the stone was stirring, awakening, answering the thunder at the gate. Lysandra's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes locked with the god's. His sapphire gaze no longer distant stars. Now they held lightning. The pounding on the doors came again, louder, desperate. Lysandra, the voice, was her father's, and it was broken in the flickering flamelight. Zeus's ivory finger curled ever so slightly around the tiny, straining golden goddess, as if to hold her back or to set her free. The night held its breath outside the trembling doors. The wind died, the all fell silent, and the only sound was the frantic drumming of a father's fists on ancient bronze, and the soft, inexorable drip, drip, drip of Lysandra's tears falling onto stone as cold as the god's unblinking starlit eyes. The darkness pressed closer, filled with hoofbeats still echoing in memory, filled with the ghost of a golden feather, filled with the weight of her father's voice, shattering the sacred silence behind the shuddering doors. Olympia waited, holding its peace, holding its terror, holding its God, who sat immovable yet alive, with watchful, ancient power. The ripple in the oil spread wider, dark circles chasing dark circles, like echoes of a blow not yet felt. And high above, Nike's wings tensed, ready for flight or fall. The final hammer blow against the bronze rang out like a cracked bell. The lock splintered, a sliver of torchlight pierced the gloom, revealing not her father's face, but the glint of cold iron and a crest unknown in peaceful Elis. Sparta, the doors began to yield. Zeus, in the sudden, jagged light, seemed to frown, and Lysandra knew the god's answer would not be a whisper tonight, but a storm. The air crackled, not with tension, with ozone, like the moment before the first lightning strike. The throne of ebony creaked, a sound like a mountain shifting in its sleep. The Spartan helmet pushed through the broken door, and the oil in the basin at Lysandra's knees began to steam. Gentle, wispy curls at first, then rising faster, hotter, carrying the scent of burning olives and something older, sulphurous, divine. Lysandra scrambled back, her prayer forgotten. The Spartan strode in, his red cloak a wound in the temple's heart. He saw her, saw the steaming basin, saw the god. His sneer froze above him. Zeus's head turned just a fraction. Stone grinding on stone, a sound to stop the world. The Spartan's eyes widened, reflecting not torchlight, but the first white-hot, forked tongue of lightning uncurling from the god's outstretched palm, where Nike no longer stood. Her golden feet hovered an inch above the skin of the god. Wings spread wide, pointing like an arrow at the intruder's heart. The air screamed, not with wind, with power unleashed. The temple filled with blinding white silence. Lysandra closed her eyes, waiting for the thunder and the answer to every prayer ever whispered in the shadow of the throne. But the thunder did not come, only a voice, not her father's, not the Spartan's, a voice like continents, grinding like stars being born. It spoke a single word, not in Greek, in a language older than mountains, a word that tasted of lightning and the void between worlds. The word hung in the scorched air, unfinished, meaning everything, meaning nothing, meaning listen. The light faded, leaving after images dancing on Lysandra's eyelids. When she dared to look, the Spartan was gone, vanished, only a scorch mark on the stone where he'd stood, shaped like a spear, pointing back toward Sparta. Nike sat once more on the god's palm, motionless, gold, perfect, but the basin of oil was dry, bone dry, cracked like a desert floor, and etched in the bottom in lines of purest ash was a single, perfect olive leaf. Zeus stared straight ahead, his sapphire eyes holding only night, but the air still hummed with aftermath, with warning, and outside the wind began again, whispering through broken doors, carrying the salt, the cold, and the distant, agonized cry of her father, calling her name into a darkness that now held more than stars. It held the echo of a god's unfinished word. Lysandra touched the cracked clay of the basin. It was warm. She looked up at the statue. A single spark flickered deep within one sapphire eye, like a promise or a secret kept. The night deepened, holding its breath once more, but now it felt alive, watchful, as if the very stones of Olympia had woken to remember their purpose. And far away, beyond the mountains, a shepherd looked up, startled, for he swore he saw against the moon the silhouette of a tiny, golden, winged woman flying faster than thought toward Corinth. Lysandra didn't see her. She only felt a sudden warmth in her chest where fear had been ice. She rose on trembling legs. The god remained immense, silent, but the silence was different now, filled not with absence, but with a presence. Listening, she walked toward the shattered doors. Each step echoed her father's voice, came again, closer, fragmented by sobs. Lysandra, alive? Thank the gods. Your brother, the fever, it broke like magic. He speaks. The words tumbled into the night. She stepped through the broken bronze into moonlight. Her father crushed her in his arms, his tears hot on her hair. Over his shoulder, Lysandra looked back into the temple where the god sat in profound darkness. But for a heartbeat, she thought she saw a faint golden smile touching the corner of his ivory mouth, then gone. The warmth in her chest blossomed. She pulled back from her father, reached into the fold of her simple dress, and pulled out a single, perfect, golden feather, warm as living breath. Her father stared, uncomprehending. Lysandra looked up at the stars. The nightingale sang again, closer now, a liquid, triumphant song. She closed her eyes, holding the feather, holding the warmth, holding the silence of the god who listened and knew the journey had just begun. The path home lay clear under the moon, but as they turned to leave the sacred precinct, a new sound rose from the temple behind them. Not stone grinding, not bronze groaning, but music, faint, ethereal, impossibly sweet, like lyre strings plucked by starlight. Lysandra froze. Her father heard nothing. "Come, daughter," he urged, voice thick with relief. She looked back one last time. The colossal doors stood broken, the interior a pit of black velvet. But deep within, in the absolute dark, 2 points of sapphire light glowed, not reflecting, generating, watching her go. And the music swelled, a single, pure note, holding the space between a heartbeat and a whisper of wings. Then silence, true silence. Olympia slept once more, but Lysandra carried its awakened heart in her hand, a feather warm as living gold, and in her bones the memory of eyes that saw everything. The night stretched cool and deep around them, her father's arm warm across her shoulders, the feather a secret pulse against her palm. They walked past silent altars, ghost white under the moon, past the shadow of the stadium where cheers once shook the earth. Now only crickets sang there. A breeze rustled the sacred olive trees, their leaves whispering ancient stories. Lysandra listened, not with her ears, with her skin. The air felt charged, like after a summer storm, clean, sharp, alive. She glanced back once more. The temple, a hulking silhouette against the stars. No light shone within, no music played, but the sense of presence lingered. A watchfulness settled over the valley, as if the earth itself had opened one eye. Her father chattered, relief making him light like a miracle. The fever broke, sweat poured, then cool, so cool, he asked for bread. Real bread. Lysandra nodded, smiling absently, her mind tumbling over the impossible. The Spartan vanished in white fire, the feather warm in her hand, the god's eyes alive with captured sky. Ahead, the path forked right, led home to Corinth, to her brother, waiting to life, resumed, left, wound upward into the foothills, toward the old sanctuary of Gaia, Earth Mother, forgotten mostly by all but a few. Lysandra stopped. Her father turned. Daughter? Concern flickering in his eyes. She opened her palm. The golden feather gleamed softly like captured moonlight. He answered. She whispered, not just for demos. Her father stared at the feather, uncomprehending awe and fear warring on his face. What is that? Before she could speak, a sound cut the night. Not hoofbeats, not lyre strings, a howl, long, low, achingly lonely, rising from the hills, from the path to Gaia's sanctuary. It wasn't a wolf. Wolves sounded different, hungrier. This was sorrow, pure, unbearable sorrow, shaped into sound. It echoed off the valley walls, filling the spaces between stars. Lysandra looked toward the hills. The feather in her palm pulsed once, warm, insistent, like a compass needle finding true north. Her father gripped her arm. No, Lysandra, that path is cursed now. The old ones say spirits walk there since the earthquake asterisk. But Lysandra wasn't listening. High on the moonlit ridge, silhouetted against the sky, stood a figure, tall, slender, not human, antlers branched from its head, great, tangled shadows. It lifted its head and howled. Again, the sound pierced Lysandra's chest, not with fear, with recognition, deep, primal, aching. The feather pulsed brighter, its warmth spreading up her arm, filling her with a strange calm. The figure on the ridge, turned. Its eyes caught the moonlight, glowing gold like the feather, like Nike's wings. It stared directly at her, then vanished into the dark trees, leaving only the echo of its sorrow and the feather burning like a tiny sun against her skin. Her father trembled. "We go home now," command in his voice. Lysandra looked at the feather, then at the hills where the golden-eyed figure had stood. The god had answered one prayer, but another had begun, whispered by a creature of moonlight and antlers, carried on a howl of ancient grief. The path to Gaia's sanctuary called, not with words, with silence, deeper than the temples. Lysandra closed her fingers around the feather, its warmth a promise or a command. She took a step, not toward home, toward the hills, toward the howling dark. Her father's gasp was sharp. Lysandra, she didn't stop. The feather lit her way, casting soft, golden shadows on the path ahead, shadows that moved like wings. The feather in Lysandra's hand was not heavy, but its warmth was a living thing, pulsing, gentle, insistent, like a second heartbeat nestled against her palm. It cast no ordinary light, no harsh beam to pierce the dark, only a soft, golden haze that clung to her skin and the path immediately before her, illuminating pebbles like fallen stars, dew-kissed grass like scattered emeralds. Her father's frantic voice faded behind her, swallowed by the velvet silence of the hillside. She didn't look back, couldn't. The pull from the ridge was a current in her blood, stronger than fear, stronger than reason. The echo of that sorrowful howl still vibrated in the hollow of her bones. The path was steep, worn smooth by forgotten feet, and rain, lots of rain. Now it was overgrown. Thorny brambles reached like skeletal fingers, whispering against her simple dress, tugging as if warning her back. But the feather's light seemed to make them shrink, to hesitate, allowing her to pass. The air grew cooler, damp, rich, with the scent of wet earth and decaying leaves, and something else, musky, wild, like crushed pine needles and deep forest loam, the scent of the creature. Moonlight filtered through the canopy, dappling the forest floor in silver and obsidian. Shadows moved, not just from the wind, but shapes that seemed to detach from the trunks of ancient oaks, watching silent sentinels. Their eyes, if they had eyes, were pools of deeper dark. Lysandra felt no malice, only a profound watchfulness, as if the forest itself held its breath, waiting to see what she would do, what the feather would do. She climbed higher, her breath forming small clouds in the chill, the sound of her own heartbeat loud in the stillness. Thump, 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 a counterpoint to the feathers. Softer, warmer pulse, the memory of the Spartan vanishing in white fire flickered in her mind, of Nike straining against the god's palm, of the oil steaming, then cracking dry. Had that been real, or a dream spun from exhaustion and terror? The feather's warmth against her skin said, real. Then she heard it, not the howl, a softer sound, the trickle of water, pure, clear, a hidden spring. She followed the liquid murmur off the path, deeper into the embrace of moss-covered rocks. And there it was, a small pool, fed by a slender cascade that wept down a sheer, black rock face. Moonlight caught the water, turning it into liquid mercury. Beside the pool, kneeling, head bowed, was the figure. Not a beast, not entirely tall, slender, clothed in shadows and tattered gray fabric that might once have been a robe, the antlers rising from a crown of tangled, dark hair were immense, real, not a helm, living bone, weathered by centuries of wind and rain. They branched upward like a sacred tree, reaching for the unreachable stars. The figure's shoulders shook silently with the rhythm of silent weeping. Lysandra stopped at the edge of the feather's golden light. The figure didn't move, didn't seem to sense her, lost in its own ocean of grief. The scent of moss and ancient tears filled the clearing. She took a hesitant step forward. The moss was cool and yielding under her bare feet, like walking on clouds of green velvet. The feather pulsed brighter, its light stretched tentatively toward the kneeling figure, touching the ragged hem of its garment. The figure flinched as if burned. Slowly, so slowly, it lifted its head. Lysandra's breath caught. The face was human, yet not strikingly beautiful, in a way that spoke of mountains and deep time. High cheekbones, like carved alabaster, eyes large and almond-shaped, now wide with shock, and they glowed a deep liquid gold, like molten honey captured in twin wells of sorrow. The same gold as the feather, the same gold as Nike's wings. No pupils, just radiant pools of light. Those eyes locked onto the feather in Lysandra's hand. A tremor ran through the figure's whole body. It raised a slender hand, fingers long and elegant, but tipped with short, dark claws, reaching not for Lysandra, for the feather. A sound escaped its lips, not a word, a whimper, low, desperate, filled with a longing so profound it made Lysandra's own chest ache. "You," Lysandra breathed the word, a fragile thing in the vast silence. "Who are you?" The figure drew back slightly. Its golden eyes flickered from the feather to Lysandra's face. Confusion warred with that deep, aching recognition. It opened its mouth, a flash of small, sharp teeth, but only a rasp came out, like stones grinding in a dry riverbed. It tried again, a cough, then a voice like wind through ancient pines, hollow, cracked, unused for lifetimes. "Guardian," it whispered. The word tasted of dust. Was guardian. Its gaze returned hungrily to the feather. "Hers." "Hers?" Lysandra echoed softly. "Nike's?" A sharp, almost painful nod. The antlers dipped, then rose. The victory, the flight, the promise. Each word was a struggle. Each word was heavy with meaning. She gave a feather once. The golden eyes clouded with memory. Before the cage. Cage? Lysandra stepped closer, drawn. The feather was humming now, a soft, vibrating warmth. "What cage?" The figure lifted its clawed hand toward the east, toward Olympia, toward the distant shadow where Zeus sat enthroned. Its expression twisted with a grief so old it was bedrock. His throne, it rasped, gold and cedar and ivory cage. For her, for the flight, tied to his hand forever, promising what he would not release. Understanding began to dawn. cold and slow, like the first gray light of a winter dawn. Nike, straining against Zeus's palm, not carved to look like flight, but prevented from flying, bound by divine will to the throne, a symbol of victory, held captive, promised but never delivered. You guarded Nike? Asterisk. Lysandra asked, her voice barely a breath. The figure shook its head slowly. Guarded the promise, the hope that flies free. Before the cage, before the god claimed her for his glory, it lowered its hand. Tears, like liquid gold, began to well in its luminous eyes. They traced paths down its pale cheeks, sizzling softly as they fell onto the moss, leaving tiny, glowing dots like fallen stars. I was forgotten when he took her, when he built his cage of splendor. My purpose lost, my connection severed. Only sorrow remains, and the echo of her wings I can no longer hear. It looked directly at the feather again, a raw hunger in its gaze. But this is her, a piece of her true self unbound. How? Lysandra thought of the temple, of the Spartan, the lightning, the feather floating onto the oil, of the image of her brother healed. Zeus answered a prayer in anger or in mercy. He unleashed a spark, and Nike, she moved. Just for a moment, this feather fell, moved. The guardian's voice was a sigh of the wind, a flicker like hope lit the depths of its golden eyes. She struggles still against the cage. The guardian reached out once more. This time, its hand trembled less. May I? Lysandra hesitated. Only a heartbeat. The feather wasn't just a thing. It felt like a piece of the divine, like a key. But the sorrow radiating from this creature was a tangible weight. It had guarded hope itself, and been abandoned. She extended her hand, opening her fingers. The feather lay on her palm, glowing softly. The guardian leaned forward, its breath warm and smelling of damp earth and crushed juniper washed over her. It didn't take the feather. It simply lowered its face close to Lysandra's palm, closing its golden eyes. It inhaled deeply, as if drinking in the scent. A shudder racked its frame, not of grief this time, but recognition, relief. A soft sound escaped it, a purr like distant thunder in a contented cat. Deep, vibrant, the glowing tears still fell, but slower now. Her essence, it breathed, unchanged, unbroken despite the cage. The promise still lives in this. It lifted its head. The sorrow was still there, a deep river carved over eons, but something else shone through, a fragile determination, like the first green shoot pushing through cracked stone. You carry hope, mortal, a shard of the flight he sought to imprison. Lysandra curled her fingers slightly, protecting the feather. What do I do? The guardian rose to its full height, imposing, majestic in the moonlight. The antlers seemed to scrape the low-hanging stars. It pointed not down the hill, but further up, toward a darker cleft in the rocks, half hidden by ferns and cascading ivy. Gaia remembers. The Earth Mother sleeps but dreams. She dreamed of the flight before the cage was built, before the god claimed Olympus. In her sanctuary, deep beneath the stone, the old ways still whisper. The feather may speak there. It may awaken what slumbers. A sanctuary beneath the stone. The thought sent a primal chill through Lysandra. Not fear, awe, deep, resonant. The feather pulsed in agreement, its warmth flowing up her arm like courage. And you? Asterisk. Lysandra asked. "Will you come?" The guardian shook its head, a gesture of infinite sadness. "My place is here, guarding the threshold, mourning the lost flight. I cannot enter the deep places. My sorrow is too loud for her dreams, but I will watch. I will listen for the echo of her wings set free." It looked toward Olympia once more, its golden eyes narrowed. "He knows you have it." The feather. He felt its separation. His anger will stir. His eagles may fly. Be swift, child of mortal hope. Be silent as the roots that delve deep. Lysandra nodded. The weight of the task settled upon her, not just for her brother, but for something older, something chained. She looked toward the cleft, a darkness that seemed to breathe slowly, deeply, like the earth itself slumbering. The feather's light seemed to strengthen, ready to pierce that ancient dark. She took a step toward the ferns, toward the ivy, toward the cleft. The guardian bowed its head, a gesture of respect or farewell. Its antlers casting long, tangled shadows as Lysandra pushed aside the cool, damp fronds. A scent rose to meet her, not moss, not decay, something deeper, older, the scent of wet stone and sleeping earth, of time compressed into darkness. The air from within was cool and still, heavy, like entering a tomb or a womb. The feathers' golden light pushed back the utter blackness, just enough to reveal the beginning of steps carved roughly into the living rock, worn smooth by countless unseen feet, descending into profound depth. She placed her bare foot on the first step, cool, solid, anchoring. She looked back. Once, the guardian stood silhouetted against the moonlit pool, a statue of grief and watchfulness, its golden eyes fixed on her. Then Lysandra turned and descended. The air grew colder. Dampness kissed her skin. The feathers' glow illuminated rough walls, glistening with moisture. Veins of quartz sparkled like frozen starlight. The steps twisted deeper. The sounds of the forest vanished, replaced by the drip, drip, drip of unseen water, and a low, thrumming vibration felt more than heard through the soles of her feet, through her bones. The slow, deep pulse of the earth. She walked for what felt like ages, down and down. The passage narrowed, then widened suddenly into a cavern. Her breath stilled. The feather's light could not reach the ceiling, lost in vast, impenetrable darkness, but it illuminated the cavern's heart, a statue, not of marble or ivory or gold, carved from a single massive stalagmite, smooth, flowing, organic. It depicted a woman, Gaia, Earth Mother, seated not on a throne, but rising from the very stone of the floor. Her form was generous, powerful, her face serene, eyes closed in eternal sleep or contemplation. Her hair was a cascade of stone, flowing like water down her back and merging with the cavern floor. Roots, thick and gnarled, spread from her feet, disappearing into the rock. In her lap, cupped in both hands, lay a hollow, a basin filled not with water, but with deep, velvety darkness. The air here was charged, thick with ancient power, quiet, resonant. The thrumming vibration was stronger here, centered on the statue. The very rock seemed alive. breathing, Lysandra approached slowly, reverently, the feather in her hand burned brighter. Its light danced over Gaia's sleeping face, catching the subtle curves, the peaceful expression. She stopped before the basin. The darkness within it swirled slowly, like ink in oil. It seemed bottomless, holding the cavern's profound silence. The guardian's words echoed. The feather may speak there. It may awaken what slumbers. Hesitantly, Lysandra lifted her hand, holding the glowing feather over the basin of darkness. Its golden light fell into the void, not illuminating it, but seeming to be swallowed, absorbed. For a long moment, nothing, only the drip, drip, drip of water, the deep, thrumming pulse. Then a single spark, deep within the basin's darkness, tiny, golden, like a distant star, igniting. It flared once, then the roots spreading from Gaia's feet began to glow, a soft, pulsating golden light, the same gold as the feather, the same gold as the guardian's eyes. It traveled slowly up the roots, along the stone folds of Gaia's robe, reaching her cupped hands. The basin of darkness began to shimmer, not with light, with reflection. Lysandra leaned closer, peering into the depths. The darkness parted, not showing her reflection, showing a vast, sunlit sky, empty, waiting, and far below, a speck of gold, growing larger, swift, unbound, wings spread wide, catching the wind. Nike, flying free, not toward Olympia, but away into the boundless blue. The image flickered like a mirage, threatened to vanish. Above Lysandra, deep within the unseen ceiling, of the cavern, a sound began. Not dripping water, not the earth's pulse. A low, ominous grinding, like stone against stone. Far above, on the surface, the guardian lifted its head, antlers piercing the night sky. Its golden eyes narrowed toward Olympia. A low growl rumbled in its chest. The air outside suddenly crackled, not with ozone, with divine fury. The grinding in the cavern grew louder. Dust began to sift down from the darkness above, falling like dry tears onto Gaia's stone hair, onto Lysandra's upturned face. The image in the basin of Nike flying wavered, fragile, precious. The roots glowed brighter, a silent plea to hold the vision. But the grinding, the dust, the distant thunder from Olympia spoke of a god awake and angry. Lysandra knew instinctively the sanctuary had been found, not by eagles, by something deeper, more elemental. The walls around her began to tremble. The dust fell like snow in the cavern. Each particle caught the feather's golden light as it drifted through the heavy air. Lysandra stood frozen before Gaia's statue, the basin in the Earth Mother's hands still held the fragile vision. Nike, soaring, unbound, but the image flickered like a candle in a gathering storm. The grinding from above grew louder, not just stone, something moving through it, something that knew the secret paths of the deep earth. Lysandra's fingers tightened around the feather. Its warmth pulsed, urgent, against her skin. The glowing roots spreading from Gaia's feet brightened. Their golden light throbbed in time with the feather, a silent, desperate conversation Then a sound, not grinding, not thunder, a voice, but not a voice, not shaped for mortal ears. It vibrated up through the stone into Lysandra's bones, a whisper of roots and rivers, of continents shifting in their sleep. Child, the word was the sigh of a forest, the groan of ancient timber, the sigh of a mountain settling. It came from everywhere and nowhere. Lysandra spun slowly, searching the cavern's shadows, but the voice was not outside her. It was inside, in her blood, in the marrow of her bones, the same place where the feather's warmth resided. You carry a spark of the unbound, the voice of Gaia resonated in the hollows of her ribs. The god feels its absence in his cage of gold. He stirs above the grinding, intensified, more dust sifted down, small pebbles now tapping against the stone floor like impatient fingers. Lysandra looked back at the basin. The image of Nike was fading, the free sky dimming, swallowed by gathering shadows. She reached out without thinking. Her fingers brushed the surface of the dark pool. Cold, not the chill of water, the deep, unyielding cold of bedrock, of time itself. It seared her fingertips, not with pain, with knowing. The vision stabilized. Nike's golden form glowed brighter. Her wings caught an unfelt wind, but something was wrong. The goddess was not alone. Shapes moved in the distant sky, dark specks at first, then larger, swift, purposeful eagles. Two of them, massive wingspans that blotted the sun. Their eyes gleamed like polished obsidian, their talons curved like scimitars. They arrowed toward Nike, not to join her, to intercept, to drag her back to the cage. Lysandra's breath caught The roots around Gaia's feet flared brighter. Their glow climbed higher up the statue's stone robes, illuminating carved patterns Lysandra hadn't noticed. Symbols, ancient, older than Greek, older than gods. They pulsed with the same gold as the feather. The roots remember Gaia's voice was softer now, tired. What the oaks have witnessed, the stones have recorded, the rivers have sung, the grinding above became a roar, a section of the cavern's ceiling cracked, fractured lines spiderwebbed through the rock. Dust became pebbles, pebbles became falling stones. Lysandra ducked instinctively. The feather in her hand flared. Its light expanded, a golden dome shielding her. Stones bounced off the shimmering barrier, but the cavern was collapsing. The roots glowed desperately. Their light reached Gaia's face. The statue's closed eyes fluttered. Not stone anymore. Flesh. Living. Breathing. Eyelids heavy with the weight of epics. They opened. Gaia's eyes were not gold, not sapphire, black, deep as the void between stars, pupilless, yet seeing through Lysandra, through the feather, through the crumbling cavern, to the eagles in the vision, to Nike fleeing to the distant ivory throne where Zeus no longer sat but stood, his marble face turned toward the hills, toward this sanctuary. He comes, asterisk. Gaia whispered. Her voice was the last leaf falling in an endless forest, not in flesh, not in storm, but through the veins of the earth. The roots suddenly yanked, not physically. Their light stretched, pulled toward the far wall of the cavern where the stone was darkest, where the grinding was loudest. Lysandra understood. The roots were pointing an escape, a path deeper. She stumbled forward. The feather's light moved with her, protecting, guiding. Behind her, Gaia's statue began to crumble. The basin in her hands splintered. The vision of Nike shattered into 1,000 liquid shards, falling like golden rain onto the roots. Where they landed, the roots grew brighter, stronger. Their glow pierced the falling debris. Lysandra reached the far wall, solid stone, but the roots converged here. Their light outlined a shape, a doorway, long sealed, long forgotten. She pressed her free hand against the rock, cold, unmoving. Above, the ceiling split open. A boulder the size of a chariot plummeted. It struck Gaia's statue, shattering it into fragments. The roots flared one last time, then went dark. Lysandra slammed the feather against the stone. A sound like a bell made of earth resounded, deep, pure. The rock shuddered, then parted, not crumbling, not breaking, melting like mist before dawn, revealing a tunnel, narrow, dark. But the feather's light pushed back the blackness, showing smooth walls, carved not by tools, by time, by water, by the patient, persistent hands of the earth itself. She stepped inside. The moment her foot touched the tunnel floor, the rock behind her sealed, silent, sudden. The roar of the collapsing cavern cut off. Only the feather's glow remained, and the sound of her own ragged breath. The air here was different, colder, older. It smelled of wet clay and secrets. The tunnel descended steeply, twisting, turning like the roots of a great tree. Lysandra followed, her bare feet Silent on the smooth stone, she walked for what felt like hours, deeper into the earth's embrace. The walls glistened, not with moisture, with something else. Flecks of mineral, tiny, glowing specks, blue, green, silver, like distant stars. They brightened as she passed, then faded behind her, marking her passage, guiding her descent. The feather pulsed steadily, its warmth a constant against her palm, a reminder, a promise. Then the tunnel ended abruptly, opening into a cavern, but not like the first. This one was vast, impossibly so. The feather's light could not reach the ceiling, could not illuminate the far walls. Only a small circle around her. The floor was smooth, polished by unseen hands, or by ages of slow, patient, dripping water. And in the center, a tree, not stone, not carving, living, an olive tree, ancient, gnarled, its trunk thicker than 10 men, its roots spread in great twisting coils, vanishing into the floor, into the walls, into the very earth. Its branches reached upward into darkness, toward a ceiling no one had ever seen. Lysandra approached. The air here was heavy, sacred. The tree stood silent, watching, waiting. She reached out, touched the bark, warm, not like living wood, like skin. The moment her fingers made contact, the tree spoke, not with words, with images, flooding her mind. A valley, green, untouched, before temples, before gods, before the first sacrificial fire. A woman with skin like dark soil and hair like twisting vines stood beneath this very tree, younger than Smaller, she cradled something in her hands, a tiny golden figure, winged, laughing, Nike, but not the Nike of the statue. This Nike was wild, free, unbound. The woman planted a kiss on the tiny goddess's brow, then opened her hands. Nike launched into the sky, her laughter like bells made of sunlight. The image shifted. Centuries passed in a blink. The valley changed. Temples rose. Fires burned. Men in animal skins became men in linen robes. The tree remained, watching, remembering. Then a storm, not of clouds, of pride. Zeus, in gleaming form, not yet stone, not yet idol, stood beneath the tree, his hand outstretched, commanding. Nike hovered before him, reluctant, her wings beating, uneasy. Zeus spoke words that burned the air. Nike shook her head, refused. Zeus frowned. Thunder gathered in his eyes. He reached into the storm and pulled lightning, not to strike, to weave golden threads of power. They coiled around Nike, binding, compelling. She struggled, fought, but the threads were too strong. With a cry that shook the valley, she was pulled toward Olympia, toward the half-built throne. The tree shuddered. Its roots dug deeper, hiding the memory, burying the pain. The images shifted again. The workshop of Phidias, the sculptor, worked not with tools, but with something darker, something given by Zeus, a sliver of that same binding lightning. He carved not just ivory and gold. He carved a prison. Nike stood on the god's palm, no longer struggling. Her wings spread, but stiff, frozen. her face a mask of captured flight. The tree wept sap like golden tears rolled down its trunk. The vision faded. Lysandra staggered back, her hand falling from the bark. The images lingered, burning in her mind. The feather in her other hand burned too, hotter now. Angry, she understood. This tree was the first, the original, the one from which all others sprang. It remembered Nike, free. It mourned her capture, and now it recognized the feather, a piece of the goddess, returned. Lysandra lifted the feather. Its light filled the cavern, brighter, stronger. The tree's branches shivered, though no wind stirred in the deep place. Its roots glowed faintly, echoing the feather's pulse. Then a sound, distant but approaching, from the tunnel behind her. Not grinding stone, not falling rock. Footsteps, slow, measured, heavy. Something was coming, something that walked like a man, but wasn't. Lysandra spun. The feather's light flared toward the tunnel mouth, illuminating the smooth walls, the star-like minerals, and casting a shadow, long, distorted, stretching toward her. The thing that made it was still out of sight, around a bend, but coming closer. The tree shuddered, its roots twisted, anxious. Its branches reached toward Lysandra, not to harm, to protect, to urge. She looked around the cavern. No other exits, no hidden doors, only the tree and the approaching footsteps. The shadow lengthened. The thing would round the bend any moment. Lysandra made a decision. She stepped toward the tree, pressed her back against its gnarled trunk, held the feather to her chest. The moment she did, The roots moved, not just glowed, moved like serpents. Awakening, they uncoiled, slid, wrapped around her ankles, her legs, gentle but firm, pulling down into the earth itself. Lysandra gasped. The roots were warm, living. They tugged her downward. The stone floor parted like water, not crushing, accepting, welcoming. She sank, knee-deep, waist-deep. The feathers' light illuminated the roots as they worked, carrying her down into the embrace of the earth. The footsteps were closer now, almost at the cavern's entrance. Lysandra took one last breath of the open air. Then the roots pulled her under. The stone sealed above her head. Darkness complete, but for the feathers, golden pulse, and the sense of being held, carried, protected, down and down and down into the roots that remembered. Above in the cavern, the footsteps stopped. A figure stood silhouetted against the tree, tall, broad, cloaked in storm. His eyes, 2 points of sapphire fire. Zeus had come, not in flesh, not in storm, but in the only form that could walk the deep paths, a form of living marble. His stone lips parted, a voice like earthquakes rolled forth. Mine, asterisk. The tree shook, but held its roots deeper than rage, deeper than gods. Zeus reached out, a hand of cold ivory to touch the trunk, to follow the roots, to reclaim what was his. But before his fingers could make contact, a sound stopped him, not from below, from above, through the miles of stone, through the sacred grove, through the temple's shattered roof, a cry, not human, not eagle, a sound of triumph, of freedom. Nike's voice, ringing across the heavens. Zeus froze, his head tilted, listening, understanding what it meant. The feather was not just a feather, it was a key, and Lysandra had turned it in the lock, far above, in the world of sun and wind. The statue of Zeus sat empty, his palm outstretched, but Nike was gone. Only a whisper of gold dust remained. Zeus, in the cavern, threw back his marble head and roared. The sound shattered stone, split roots, shook the foundations of mountains. But Lysandra was beyond his reach, carried by the roots that remembered, toward a deeper secret, a older power, and the place where Gaia truly slept. The last thing Lysandra heard before the roots carried her into silence was the tree whispering a single word in a language older than gods, almost. Then darkness, warm, safe, and the feathers, steady, golden pulse. The roots carried her through darkness, not the crushing dark of buried things, but a living dark, warm, pulsing, like the space between heartbeats. Lysandra could not see, could not speak, but she felt the feather's light still cradled against her chest. Its glow filtered through her skin, turning her ribs to golden latticework, illuminating the intricate, woven pathways of the roots that held her. They moved with purpose, downward, always downward, through strata of forgotten stone, through veins of dormant magma, through layers of memory older than mankind. Time lost meaning. It might have been minutes or centuries. Then the roots shifted, their grip loosened. Lysandra felt cool air on her face, the scent of damp clay, and something sweet, like honey, infused with moonlight. She gasped as the roots set her down. Her bare feet touched not stone, not earth, something softer, warmer. She opened her eyes. The feather's light expanded, filling the space. A cavern, but unlike any before. Vast, circular, the walls curved inward like the inside of a colossal seed pod. They pulsed with a soft, bioluminescent glow, blue-green, flickering like distant fireflies. The floor was covered in a thick velvet moss, deep purple, yielding underfoot, and at the center, a lake, not of water, of liquid silver, motionless, perfectly reflective, like a mirror cast by the moon herself. Lysandra stepped forward. The moss muffled her footsteps. The air thrummed with a low vibration, not the earth's pulse. Something deeper, more resonant. It hummed in her teeth, in the hollows of her bones. She approached the silver lake. Her reflection wavered, then cleared, but it wasn't her face that stared back. A woman, ancient, ageless, her skin the rich brown of fertile soil, her hair a cascade of twisting vines and blooming flowers, her eyes closed, sleeping. Gaia, not a statue, the Earth Mother herself. Lysandra's breath caught the reflection, smiled without opening her eyes. You've come. The voice was the whisper of leaves in a sacred grove, the sigh of continents dancing on molten stone. Lysandra fell to her knees, not in worship, in exhaustion, in awe. The feather in her hand pulsed brighter. Its light stretched across the silver lake, touching Gaia's reflection. Where it made contact, ripples spread, not outward, inward, converging at the center, where they coalesced into a shape, small, winged, Nike, but not the frozen goddess from the statue. This Nike was vibrant, alive, her wings fluttering with restless energy. She hovered above the silver surface. Her tiny hands reached toward Lysandra. You have a piece of me. Nike's voice was the sound of sunlight on golden wheat, of arrows swift flight, a fragment of my freedom. Lysandra extended the feather. Nike's tiny fingers brushed the golden veins. A spark leaped between them. The vision in the lake shifted. The silver surface showed Olympia, the temple, the statue of Zeus. But now his ivory face was twisted in rage. His sapphire eyes blazed. His marble hands clutched at empty air where Nike had once stood. Now only faint gold dust remained. Nike's laughter, like tiny bells, filled the cavern. He searches but cannot find. Not here, not in the roots that remember. Gaia's reflection sighed. He will dig, he will burn, he will shake the very bones of the earth to reclaim what he thinks is his. Nike's mirth faded. She hovered lower, her tiny face serious. The feather is just a piece. The rest of me still hangs in the balance between freedom and cage. Lysandra understood. The feather was a fragment, a spark, but the greater part of Nike remained bound somewhere between the waking world and this, dreaming deep. How? Lysandra's voice was rough, unused. How do we free you completely? The silver lake rippled. Gaia's reflection shifted, now showing a tree, not the ancient olive. From the cavern above, a new tree, slender, young, its leaves golden, its trunk streaked with veins of sapphire. It grew in a place between places where roots met sky, where dreams met waking. Nike hovered near its branches. The world tree, she whispered, planted when the first oak touched the first cloud. Its roots in my prison, its branches in my freedom. Lysandra stared. The tree was familiar, not from life, from stories, old tales, whispered by grandmothers to restless children, of a tree that connected all things. It exists. Gaia's voice rumbled. All myths have roots. All dreams have seeds. Nike darted closer. Her tiny hands brushed Lysandra's cheek, a spark of warmth. You must plant the feather in the tree's shadow, where the roots drink from the sky. Lysandra shook her head. I don't understand. Where is this tree? The silver lake shimmered. The image changed. A mountain, not Olympus. Older, wider. Its peak hidden in swirling mist. At its base, a cave, dark, yawning. The entrance flanked by two colossal stone serpents, their eyes gleaming with captured starlight. The birthplace of time, Gaia murmured, where the first dawn kissed the first stone. Nike nodded. The feather will guide you, but beware. The path is guarded by more than stone. Lysandra looked down at the feather. Its light had dimmed, not fading, conserving, waiting. She swallowed. And if I succeed? Nike's wings stilled. Her tiny face alight with hope. Then the cage will shatter, and I will fly, and the god will learn what it means to grasp at victory and find only dust. A sound echoed through the cavern, distant but approaching. The grinding of stone, the roar of thwarted divinity. Zeus, still searching, still furious, drawing closer. Gaia's reflection frowned. He cannot enter here, but his rage will shake the foundations. You must go, child of mortal courage. The roots that had brought her stirred, lifting from the moss, reaching for her, ready to carry her upward toward the world, toward the mountain, toward the tree. Nike darted close, pressed a tiny kiss to Lysandra's forehead. Hurry, the roots wrapped around her, warm, firm. Lysandra took one last look at the silver lake, at Gaia's reflection, at Nike's hopeful face. Then the roots pulled, and the cavern, the light, the scent of honeyed moonlight vanished, replaced by the rush of stone and earth, and the feathers, steady, golden pulse, guiding her upward toward the next impossible step. The roots released her into moonlight. Cool air brushed Lysandra's cheeks, carrying the scent of snow and ancient stone. She knelt on a rocky outcrop, her fingers digging into crumbling shale. The feather still glowed in her clenched fist. Its light painted the stones around her in liquid gold. She lifted her head and saw the mountain just as the silver lake had shown, vaster than imagination, its peak swallowed by swirling mist, a presence more than stone, a living thing, breathing the slow breaths of geologic time. The air here thinned, sharp, each inhale a knife of ice and altitude. Lysandra stood, her legs trembled, not from exhaustion, from the weight of standing on the skin of the world's oldest dream. The path was clear, worn smooth by no mortal feet, winding upward toward the cave. The entrance yawned in the mountainside, dark, silent. The two stone serpents flanking it were larger than temple columns. Their coiled bodies showed through the thin soil like the bones of some buried colossus. Their eyes gleamed even in darkness, not reflecting the feather's light, glowing from within, flecks of starlight trapped in obsidian. Lysandra began to climb. The higher she went, the stranger the air became, thick yet weightless, like breathing in a dream. The stars above seemed closer, brighter. Their light did not twinkle, but burned, steady and watchful. Halfway to the cave, the wind changed, a scent not of stone or snow, something musky, animal, warm. She turned. A wolf stood on the path behind her. Not a wolf. The wolf larger than any natural beast. Its fur, white as untouched snow. Its eyes, gold, like the feather, like Nike's wings. It did not snarl, did not crouch, simply watched, breath steaming in the cold air. Lysandra froze. The wolf tilted its head. Then it stepped aside, clearing the path. Its massive tail swished once, a gesture not of threat, but invitation. She exhaled, shakily, took another step upward. The wolf fell in beside her, its shoulder brushing her hip, warm, solid, a silent companion. Together they climbed. The cave mouth loomed. The stone serpents seemed to shift as she approached, not moving, but aware, their starlit eyes tracking her. The wolf pressed closer, a low rumble in its chest. Lysandra lifted the feather before her. Its light pushed back the cave's darkness, revealing walls carved with ancient symbols, the same as those on Gaia's roots, older than language. She stepped inside. The air changed instantly, warmer, heavier, scented with rich soil and something sweet, like ripening fruit. The cave was not a tunnel, but a grove. Trees grew here, their roots twisting through stone, their branches curving upward toward no visible sky. Yet they lived, thrived. Leaves of deepest green rustled, though no wind stirred. And at the center, the world tree, just as she'd seen, younger than expected, slender, its bark streaked with sapphire veins, its leaves pure gold, not metallic, living, breathing, catching the feather's light and multiplying it, scattering golden fractals across the grove's loamy floor. The wolf stopped at the tree's base. Saturday, its golden eyes fixed on Lysandra, waiting. She approached the tree. Up close, she saw its roots did not bury in earth, but spread along the ground, then vanished, disappearing into the stone itself, as if the mountain were soil and the branches. She looked up. They stretched into darkness, but not the cave's ceiling, a darkness more profound, a void that shimmered at the edges, like the space between stars. Lysandra understood the roots drinking from the stone, the branches drinking from the sky, the in-between place where Nike was trapped. She knelt before the tree, the feather in her hand burned brighter. Its light reached for the tree, tendrils of gold stretching like yearning fingers. Lysandra took a breath, planted the feather's tip into the soft earth at the tree's base. For a heartbeat, nothing. Then the ground shuddered. The tree's roots glowed, sapphire light racing along their length, up the trunk, into the branches. The golden leaves shivered. Then one detached, floated down, landed on the feather. A spark, white hot, blinding. The feather sank into the earth. The tree's roots twisted, reached, encircled it. Above, the branches shook, a sound like 1,000 silken wings unfurling. Then light from the void, a streak of gold. Nike, not the tiny goddess from the visions, full-sized, radiant, her wings spanning the grove's width, her laughter filling the sacred space. She landed, light as dandelion fluff, before Lysandra, her eyes the same gold as the wolf's, as the feathers, as freedom. You did it, asterisk. Her voice was the wind beneath a bird's first flight. Lysandra could only stare. Nike reached out, touched touched her cheek. The cage is broken. The rest of me is free. A sound like shattering glass echoed from far away, from Olympia, from the throne, now empty. Nike's smile faded. He comes, the wolf growled, low, dangerous. Nike looked to the cave's entrance. Not here, not in this place, but his anger will shake the world. She turned back to Lysandra. You must go now. Lysandra blinked. How? Nike smiled, nodded toward the wolf. With her, the white wolf stood, shook out her massive fur, then lowered her body, an invitation to ride. Lysandra hesitated, looked at Nike. And you? The goddess spread her wings. I fly to the edges of the sky where even gods cannot reach. Her form began to shimmer, to fade. Thank you, daughter of mortal courage. Then she was gone. Only a whisper of golden light remained. Lysandra turned, climbed onto the wolf's back. Her fingers tangled in thick fur. The wolf stood. Lysandra had only a moment to brace. Then they were running, not toward the cave entrance, toward the world tree. Its branches parted, the void between them swallowed wolf and rider. Whole darkness, then light, blinding, golden, warm. Lysandra squeezed her eyes shut. When she opened them, she stood in a field, green, rolling, filled with wildflowers. The wolf gone. Only a single white hair clung to her sleeve. The feather, too, was gone. Only a faint golden dust on her fingertips, and the memory of wings unfurling. She turned. The field sloped downward to a village. Her village, home. Lysandra began to walk, her feet bare on soft grass, her heart light, unburdened. behind her, a whisper of wind, carrying the faintest echo of laughter, and far, far away, a sound like thunder rolling across a clear sky, the anger of a god cheated. But Lysandra did not look back. She walked toward home, toward her brother, toward life, beneath a sky that now held one more unbound secret. The end. Before you sleep, if this story carried you to distant mountains and ancient groves, press like to honor the journey. Subscribe for more whispered adventures. Tell us in the comments which moment shimmered brightest for you. And tap the bell to wander with us whenever new tales awaken. May your dreams be deep roots and boundless skies. Good night.